The rain had soaked through my coat by the time I reached the iron gates. My fingers trembled. Not from the cold, but from something deeper. Something that had been gnawing at my insides since I'd checked my phone an hour ago. 11:47 p.m. I was late. Very late. The estate loomed before me, all dark stone and towering windows that seemed to watch my every move. Even in the downpour, the place exuded wealth and danger in equal measure. Security cameras tracked my approach, their red lights blinking like predatory eyes. I'd lived here for 3 months now, yet I still felt like an intruder every time I passed through these gates. My shoes squelched against the marble as I stepped into the entrance hall. The chandeliers cast golden pools of light across the floor, making the water dripping from my clothes look like liquid amber. I tried to move quietly, peeling off my soaked coat with shaking hands. Maybe he was asleep. Maybe he hadn't noticed. Maybe... Is this an hour to come home? The voice cut through the silence like a blade through silk. Low, controlled, devastating. My entire body went rigid, my coat slipping from my fingers and hitting the floor with a wet slap. He emerged from the shadows of the sitting room, and even after all this time, the sight of him still stole the breath from my lungs. Dante Moretti, 28 years old and already the most feared man in the city. Tonight he wore black dress pants and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and marked with ink I'd never dared to ask about. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, waiting, watching the clock. My voice came out barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. The subway was delayed, and then the subway. He said it like a curse, taking a step closer. His cologne reached me first, cedar and something darker, more expensive. Something that always made my head spin. You took the subway. Alone. At this hour. It wasn't a question. The muscle in his jaw ticked, the only visible sign of the rage I could feel radiating off him in waves. His eyes, those impossibly dark eyes that had first captured me in a moment of weakness, tracked over my soaked form with an intensity that made me want to disappear into the marble beneath my feet. I told you, he continued, his voice dropping even lower, that Marco drives you, everywhere, always. Marco wasn't available, and Sarah needed me to cover her shift at the diner. I couldn't just... You couldn't just what? He closed the distance between us in 3 strides, and suddenly he was there, towering over me, his presence overwhelming every one of my senses. Call me? Tell me where you were? You couldn't do that? The scent of his cologne mixed with something else now. Scotch, barely noticeable, but there. He'd been drinking while he waited. My stomach twisted with guilt and something else. Something I didn't want to name. My phone died, I whispered, unable to meet his eyes. I'm sorry, Dante. I really am. I just needed the extra money, and Sarah was desperate, and I thought... You thought? His hand came up, and I flinched. Not because I believed he'd hurt me, but because the gesture was so sudden, so filled with barely contained emotion. But he didn't strike. Instead, his fingers curved around my jaw, tilting my face up to his with a gentleness that contradicted the fury burning in his gaze. You thought you could just disappear for hours without a word? You thought I wouldn't worry? That I wouldn't imagine every terrible thing that could happen to a woman alone in this city at night? His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and I realized with horror that tears had started streaming down my face, mixing with the rain still clinging to my skin. You don't understand, I managed, my voice breaking. I'm not used to checking in with someone. I've been taking care of myself since I was 16, Dante. I can't just... You're not alone anymore, Arya. The words came out rough, almost pained. When are you going to accept that? 3 months ago, I'd been invisible. Just another waitress in a city full of them, serving overpriced coffee to people who never bothered to learn my name. I'd been drowning in student debt, living in a shoebox apartment with 2 roommates, eating ramen for dinner more nights than not. I'd been nobody. Then he walked into the cafe. I remembered every detail of that moment, the way conversation had died when he entered, followed by 2 men in dark suits who positioned themselves by the door and windows. The way everyone suddenly found their phones fascinating. Unwilling to make eye contact, the way he'd walked straight to the counter, to me, while his security checked the exits. He'd ordered an espresso. I'd made it with shaking hands, certain I'd somehow offend him, certain that one wrong move would end badly for me. But when I'd set the cup down, our eyes had met, and something had shifted in the air between us. "You have kind eyes," he'd said, his voice low enough that only I could hear. In a world like mine, that's rare. I should have known then that I was in trouble. Now, standing in his entrance hall, soaked to the bone and trembling under his touch, I knew I was in far deeper than I'd ever imagined possible. "I'm not trying to control you," he said, his thumb still tracing gentle patterns on my cheek. "I'm trying to keep you safe. Do you understand the difference? It feels the same from where I'm standing." I shot back, finding a spark of defiance even through my tears. Something flashed in his eyes, surprise maybe, or approval. His lips curved into the ghost of a smile, dangerous and beautiful. "You have fire in you, Piccola. I've always known that. But fire can burn out quickly in the darkness, and there are things in my world that would love nothing more than to extinguish your light. Then maybe I shouldn't be in your world at all." The words escaped before I could stop them, hanging in the air between us like a grenade with the pin pulled. His hand fell from my face, and for a moment, his expression went completely blank, that terrifying emptiness that meant his mind was working through possibilities, calculating outcomes, deciding fates. "You think it's that simple?" He took a step back, creating distance that somehow felt worse than his overwhelming proximity. "You think you can just walk away now, after everything?" I didn't ask for any of this. The words burst out of me. 3 months of confusion and fear, an unwanted desire finally breaking free. I didn't ask to be brought here, to be given clothes I can't afford, to have guards following me everywhere. I didn't ask for you to what, Arya? He moved closer again, predatory, purposeful. To care what happens to you? To lie awake worrying when you're not where you're supposed to be? To imagine all the ways this city could hurt you? "I'm not yours to worry about, aren't you?" The question hung between us, loaded with meanings I wasn't ready to examine. Because the truth was complicated. Yes, I lived in his house. Yes, he'd paid off my debts without asking. I'd found out only when the collection calls stopped. Yes, his men drove me to school, to work, anywhere I needed to go. Yes, he'd given me safety and security I'd never known. But I'd never asked for any of it. He'd simply decided, with the same absolute authority he used to run his empire, that I was now under his protection. And once Dante Moretti decided something, the universe itself seemed to bend to his will. "I need to change," I whispered, unable to hold his gaze any longer. "I'm freezing." For a long moment, he didn't respond. Then, "Go." But this conversation isn't over. I didn't need to be told twice. I grabbed my soaking coat from the floor and hurried toward the stairs, feeling his eyes burning into my back with every step. My room was on the 2nd floor, not the master suite where he slept, but close enough that I could sometimes hear him moving around late at night when sleep eluded us both. The door clicked shut behind me, and I sagged against it, finally allowing myself to breathe. My room was beautiful, all cream and gold, with a bed so large I still felt lost in it, windows that overlooked the gardens, and a closet full of clothes that still had tags on them. A gilded cage, just as comfortable as it was confining. I peeled off my wet clothes with numb fingers, letting them fall in a heap on the marble bathroom floor. The shower was already running hot. Motion sensors, just one of 100 small luxuries I was still getting used to. I stepped under the spray and let the heat seep into my bones, washing away the rain and the cold and the guilt that had been eating at me all night. But I couldn't wash away the memory of his face when I'd walked in. That mixture of relief and rage, and something else, something that looked almost like fear, as if my being late had genuinely terrified him. I'd seen Dante intimidate grown men with a look. I'd watched him command a room with nothing but his presence. I'd witnessed the way people stepped aside when he walked past, the way they lowered their voices and eyes when he was near. But I'd never seen him afraid, not until tonight. The water ran cold before I finally stepped out, wrapping myself in a towel so soft it felt like sin against my skin. Everything here felt like that, too good, Too much, too expensive for someone like me. I pulled on the silk pajamas I'd found in my dresser last week, probably placed there by Maria, the housekeeper who moved through the house like a ghost, anticipating needs before they were spoken. A soft knock on my door made my heart lurch. Arya. His voice came through the wood, calmer now, but no less intense. May I come in? I should have said no. I should have told him I was tired, that we could talk in the morning. But instead, I found myself walking to the door and opening it. He stood in the hallway, still in the same clothes, but he'd rolled his sleeves down now and fastened the buttons at his wrists. In his hands, he held a mug that steamed gently, filling the air with the scent of honey and lemon. Hot tea, he said simply. You'll catch cold otherwise. The gesture was so unexpected, so domestic, that for a moment I could only stare. This man who commanded an empire, who had blood on his hands and darkness in his past, stood in my doorway offering me tea like a concerned, what? Friend? Guardian? Something far more complicated than either? Thank you, I whispered, taking the mug. Our fingers brushed in the exchange, and electricity sparked up my arm. He lingered in the doorway, and I realized with a start that he was waiting, actually waiting, for permission to enter. As if this was my space, my sanctuary, even though he owned every inch of this house, and probably half the city beyond it. You can come in, I heard myself say, stepping back. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him with a quiet click that seemed far too final. The room suddenly felt smaller with him in it, the air charged with tension I couldn't quite name. I frightened you earlier, he said, standing by the window, his back to me. That wasn't my intention. You were angry. I was terrified. He turned to face me, and the raw honesty in his expression stole my breath. When you weren't here by 10, I called Marco. He said you'd told him you didn't need a ride. By 11, I'd called the diner, but Sarah said you'd left an hour ago. Do you understand what went through my mind during that time, Arya? The scenarios I imagined? I set the tea down on my nightstand with shaking hands. I'm not used to someone tracking my every move. It's not tracking. It's caring. He moved closer, each step deliberate. There are people in this city who would hurt you just to get to me, people who wouldn't hesitate to use you as a message, a warning. Your independence, your need to handle things alone. It's admirable, Piccola, but it's also dangerous, especially now. Why especially now? His jaw tightened. Because 3 days ago, someone very stupid tried to move against me. They failed, but they're desperate now. Desperate men do desperate things, and they always go after what matters most. The implication hung heavy in the air between us. I don't matter to you, I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew it was a lie. He closed the remaining distance between us in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame my face with a gentleness that contradicted his intensity. You matter more than you should, he said, his voice rough. More than is wise, more than is safe for either of us. But here we are. My heart hammered against my ribs. Dante, when you weren't here tonight, when I couldn't reach you, couldn't find you. His thumb traced my lower lip, and I felt the tremor in his hand. I've faced bullets without flinching, Arya. I've stared down men twice my size without blinking, but the thought of something happening to you, that terrifies me. I should have pushed him away, should have reminded him that this, whatever this was, couldn't happen. He was dangerous, connected to things I didn't want to understand. His world was violence and shadows, and I'd worked too hard to build a life in the light. But God help me, I leaned into his touch instead. This is insane, I breathed. Yes, he agreed, his forehead coming to rest against mine. Completely insane. We barely know each other. I know that you take your coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream. I know you bite your lip when you're nervous and that you read romance novels when you think no one's watching. I know you sing quietly to yourself when you cook, and that you're kind to everyone you meet, even when they don't deserve it. I know your dreams, Arya, because you talk in your sleep sometimes, and the walls in this house aren't as thick as you think. Heat flooded my cheeks. You've been listening to me sleep? I've been trying not to, he said, and there was dark humor in his voice now. But you're right down the hall, and some nights I can't help myself. That's creepy. I know. His lips curved into a half smile that did dangerous things to my pulse. Add it to the list of reasons you should run from me. Maybe I should. But you won't. He was right. God help me. He was right. Because somewhere between that first espresso and this moment, I'd stopped seeing the dangerous mafia boss everyone else feared. I'd started seeing the man beneath, the one who brought me tea when I was cold, who worried when I was late, who looked at me like I was something precious in a world built on cruelty. A sharp knock on the door shattered the moment. Dante's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerability vanished, replaced by cold calculation. His hand moved to the small of his back, to a gun I suddenly realized he'd been carrying this entire time. Boss. A gruff voice came through the door. We have a situation. Dante's eyes met mine, and I saw the apology there before he spoke. Stay here. Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone but me or Marco. Understand? Fear crystallized in my chest. What's happening? Just a precaution. But his tone said otherwise. He moved to the door, paused with his hand on the knob, and looked back at me one more time. Promise me you'll stay here. I promise. He nodded once, then slipped out into the hallway. I heard his voice, low and commanding, speaking in rapid Italian to whoever had interrupted us. Then footsteps, moving quickly down the hall and toward the stairs. I locked the door with shaking hands, my earlier exhaustion forgotten. Through my window, I could see lights coming on across the grounds. Security personnel moving into position. Cars starting in the garage. Something was wrong. Very wrong. And as I stood there in my silk pajamas, in my beautiful borrowed room, in this dangerous man's house, I realized with crystal clarity that my simple life, my invisible life, was gone forever. I'd walked through Dante Moretti's door 3 months ago to deliver an espresso. Now I couldn't find my way back out. Sleep never came. I spent the hours until dawn curled in the window seat, watching the grounds below transform from a peaceful estate into something resembling a military operation. Black SUVs arrived in silence, disgorging men in dark suits who moved with lethal precision. They positioned themselves at every entrance, every corner, every vulnerable point in the property's defenses. The security that had always seemed excessive now appeared barely adequate. The tea Dante had brought me sat cold and untouched on the nightstand, a reminder of the moment before everything shifted, before that knock on the door had pulled him away and left me alone with my racing thoughts and the terrible realization that I was now part of something far bigger and more dangerous than I'd allowed myself to believe. The sky was turning pale gray when I finally heard footsteps in the hallway. Heavy, measured, not Dante's. These belonged to someone larger, moving with the careful deliberation of a man trained to assess threats. Miss Aria? The voice was familiar. Marco, Dante's head of security, a mountain of a man with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating frame. Mr. Moretti requests your presence in his office. Requests. As if I had a choice. I changed quickly, pulling on jeans and a simple sweater, tying my dark hair back with shaking hands. My reflection in the mirror showed a girl who looked far too young to be caught up in whatever web she'd stumbled into. Dark circles shadowed my eyes, and my skin had taken on a pallor that spoke of fear and sleeplessness. Marco waited outside my door, his expression carefully neutral. This way, please. We descended the main staircase in silence. The house felt different in daylight, or what passed for daylight through the heavy clouds that had settled over the city. The opulence that seemed romantic at night now felt oppressive, every expensive surface a reminder of the blood money that had paid for it. Dante's office was in the east wing, a part of the house I'd only glimpsed in passing. Marco knocked twice, a specific pattern, before opening the door and gesturing me inside. The room was all dark wood and leather, bookshelves lining the walls, a massive desk dominating the space. But it was the man behind that desk who commanded attention. Dante looked like he hadn't slept either. His shirt was wrinkled, collar unbuttoned, tie discarded somewhere. Dark stubble shadowed his jaw, making him look dangerous in a way that should have terrified me. but instead sent heat pooling low in my stomach. He wasn't alone. 3 men occupied the chairs facing his desk, all of them turning to look at me as I entered. I recognized one, Antonio, Dante's cousin, whom I'd met briefly at a dinner last month. The other 2 were strangers, but they carried themselves with the same lethal confidence as every man in Dante's employ. "Gentlemen," Dante said, his voice carrying absolute authority despite the exhaustion in his eyes, "give us the room." They filed out without argument, Antonio's gaze lingering on me for a moment before he left. Something in his expression made my skin crawl. Assessment, calculation, perhaps even pity. The door closed with a definitive click. "Sit," Dante said, gesturing to one of the leather chairs. I remained standing. "What's happening? Why are there so many guards? What was the situation last night?" He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he stood, moving around the desk to lean against it, arms crossed over his chest. The pose should have been casual, but everything about him screamed tension. "Last night," he began, "while you were serving coffee at the diner, someone tried to breach the south entrance of the property. They were stopped before they reached the house, but their intention was clear." My blood ran cold. What intention? "You, Arya." The words came out flat, emotionless, but I could see the muscle ticking in his jaw. "They were coming for you." The room tilted. I gripped the back of the nearest chair, my knuckles white. "That's impossible. Nobody even knows I'm here. I'm nobody. Why would anyone—" "You stopped being nobody the moment you entered my life." He pushed off the desk, closing the distance between us. "I've been careful, Piccola. So careful. You use your own name, keep your job, maintain your routine. I thought if we kept things quiet, kept you hidden in plain sight, you'd be safe. I was wrong." "Who were they?" My voice came out barely above a whisper. "The Calabrese family." He said the name like a curse. "A rival organization that's been testing boundaries for months. They've been hemorrhaging territory and money, growing desperate. Last week they made a move against one of my shipments. We retaliated. Apparently, they've decided the best way to hurt me is through you." The weight of his words pressed down on me like physical force. How did they even know about me? Something flickered across his face. Guilt, anger, self-recrimination. "You were photographed. 3 weeks ago, when we had dinner at Giordano's. I was careless, let my guard down for one evening, and someone caught us leaving together. The photo made it onto certain websites, and now—" He trailed off, running a hand through his already disheveled hair. "Now you're marked as mine, whether you want to be or not." I sank into the chair, my legs no longer capable of supporting me. This can't be happening, but it is. He crouched before me, bringing himself to eye level, his hands coming to rest on the arms of the chair, caging me in. "Which is why we need to talk about what happens next." "What happens next is I leave," I said, even though the words felt hollow. "I go back to my old apartment, my old life. They'll lose interest if I'm not connected to you anymore." His laugh was bitter, humorless. "You think it works that way? You think the Calabrese family will just shrug and move on? They've identified you as a vulnerability, Arya. That doesn't change whether you're sleeping under my roof or back in that shoebox apartment with your roommates who wouldn't hear you scream." The image his words conjured made bile rise in my throat. "Then what?" I demanded, anger finally breaking through the fear. "I just stay here forever? Become your prisoner because you decided to drag me into your world?" "You're not my prisoner." But his eyes told a different story. "You're under my protection. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting." He stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the gardens. Dawn had fully broken now, pale light filtering through the clouds and casting everything in shades of gray. "I'm moving you," he said without turning around. "Today. There's a property outside the city, more secure, more isolated. You'll stay there until this situation is resolved. And my classes, my job, my life? Your life is in danger." He spun to face me, and the intensity in his gaze pinned me to the chair. "Everything else is secondary." "Not to me, it isn't." I shot to my feet, 3 months of frustration and confusion boiling over. "You don't get to just decide these things for me, Dante. I have a scholarship to protect, exams in 2 weeks. Responsibilities. You have a target on your back. His voice rose for the first time, echoing off the wood-paneled walls. Do you understand what these people are capable of? What they'd do to you to send me a message? Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided I was worth saving. The words hung between us, sharp and accusatory. His expression shuddered, becoming that blank mask I'd seen last night. The one that meant I'd struck a nerve. You're right, he said quietly. I should have walked away that day in the cafe. Should have had my espresso and left you to your invisible life. It would have been kinder. He moved toward me slowly, deliberately, until we were close enough that I could feel the heat radiating off his body. But I'm not a kind man, Arya. I'm selfish and possessive, and the moment I looked into your eyes, I knew I'd never be able to walk away. So yes, I dragged you into my world, and now I'll do whatever it takes to keep you alive in it. My breath caught. Even if I don't want this, tell me you don't. His hand came up to cup my cheek, thumb tracing the dark circle beneath my eye. Tell me you didn't feel what I felt last night before Marco interrupted us. Tell me your heart doesn't race when I'm near, that you don't lie awake thinking about me the way I lie awake thinking about you. Tell me, and I'll arrange for you to disappear. New city, new name, new life. You'll never see me again. I opened my mouth to say exactly that, to end this insanity before it consumed us both. But the words wouldn't come, because he was right. God help me, he was right about all of it. I hate you, I whispered instead, knowing it for the lie it was. His lips curved into a sad smile. I know, Piccola, but you'll hate me alive rather than mourn me dead. That's a trade I'm willing to make. A sharp knock interrupted us, the same pattern Marco had used earlier. Come, Dante called, not taking his eyes off me. The door opened to reveal Marco, his expression grim. Boss, we have a problem. Your uncle is here. He's demanding to see you, and he's brought half his crew with him. Dante's entire body went rigid. Stefano, here, now, says it can't wait. I'd never heard Dante mention his uncle, but the way his jaw clenched at the name told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a friendly family visit. Take Arya to the blue room, Dante ordered. Keep her there until I come for her. No one gets near her. No one. Understood. Marco gestured to me. Miss? I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening, I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. Dante's eyes flashed, surprise, irritation, and something that might have been respect. My uncle is complicated. He has certain ideas about how things should be run, and my relationship with you violates several of his principles. I need to handle this delicately, which means you need to not be in the same room when we have this conversation. Why? What principles? The kind that say attachments are weaknesses to be exploited. He moved to his desk, unlocking a drawer and removing a handgun that looked deadly and businesslike. He checked the magazine with practiced efficiency before tucking it into the holster at his back. The kind that say a boss who falls in love becomes vulnerable, soft. The kind that would see you as a liability that needs to be eliminated. The casual way he said, falls in love, nearly stopped my heart. You can't be serious, I breathed. Marco, Dante said, ignoring my reaction. Now. This time I didn't resist, when Marco gently took my elbow and guided me toward a door hidden in the wood paneling. It opened onto a narrow hallway I'd never seen before, a servant's passage probably, meant for staff to move through the house unseen. We walked in silence, climbing stairs that seemed to spiral endlessly upward. My mind raced, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 12 hours. The breach attempt, the photograph, the uncle who apparently wanted me dead. And beneath it all, that casual mention of love, as if Dante hadn't just casually detonated a bomb in the middle of our conversation. The blue room turned out to be a small sitting room on the 3rd floor, decorated in shades of sapphire and silver. Windows overlooked the front drive, where I could see several black cars had assembled, disgorging men in expensive suits, who moved with the same predatory grace as everyone in Dante's world. Stay away from the windows, Marco instructed, positioning himself by the door. And don't worry, Miss Arya. The boss won't let anything happen to you. How can you be sure? His expression softened slightly. Because I've worked for Mr. Moretti for 6 years, and I've never seen him care about anything the way he cares about you. He'll burn the city down before he lets anyone touch you. The certainty in his voice should have been comforting. Instead, it terrified me. Because what kind of life could I have with a man who would burn a city for me? What kind of person did it make me that some twisted part of me found that romantic instead of horrifying? I moved to the window despite Marco's warning, careful to stand to the side where I could see but not be seen. The men from the cars had gathered near the entrance, and even from this distance, I could read the tension in their stances. This wasn't a casual meeting. This was a confrontation. The front door opened, and Dante emerged, flanked by Antonio and 2 other men I recognized from his inner circle. He'd changed into a fresh shirt and suit jacket, every inch the powerful boss now, no trace of the exhausted, vulnerable man who'd crouched before me minutes ago. An older man separated himself from the group by the cars. Even at this distance, I could see the family resemblance. Same dark hair threaded with silver, same commanding presence, same dangerous grace. But where Dante's power felt controlled, focused, this man's felt wild, unpredictable. They met in the middle of the drive. I couldn't hear what was being said, but body language told the story. The uncle, Stefano, was gesturing broadly, angrily. Dante stood perfectly still, arms crossed, face impassive, a statue of calm in the face of his uncle's storm. Then Stefano said something that made Dante's entire posture change. His hands dropped to his sides, fingers curling into fists. Even from here, I could see the rage that transformed his features. "This isn't good," Marco muttered behind me. "What did he say?" "I don't know, but..." The door burst open, cutting Marco off mid-sentence. Antonio stood in the doorway, breathing hard, his usually composed expression fractured by urgency. "We need to move her. Now." Stefano knows she's here, and he's demanding Dante hand her over for protection. It's a trap. If we don't get her out before... The sound of gunfire erupted from below, shattering the tense silence. Glass broke. Men shouted. More shots, rapid succession. The distinctive crack of different weapons creating a horrifying symphony. Marco had his gun out in an instant, positioning himself between me and the door. "How many?" "Calabrese hit squad, south entrance." Stefano's men turned on us. This whole thing was a setup. Antonio grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the window. "There's a panic room in the east wing. We get her there, lock it down, and wait for backup." "What about Dante?" I demanded, my voice high and tight with fear. "He can handle himself. You're the target, and if they get to you..." Antonio didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We ran. The elegant hallways became a maze of terror, the sounds of violence echoing through the house. More gunfire, closer now. Breaking glass, shouting in Italian, English, languages I didn't recognize. The beautiful prison I'd been living in had transformed into a war zone. Marco led, gun raised, checking corners with professional efficiency. Antonio stayed close behind me, his hand gripping my arm hard enough to bruise. We descended a back staircase I'd never seen, emerged into a hallway lined with portraits of stern-faced men who'd built this empire on blood and violence. A man appeared at the end of the hallway, not one of Dante's. I knew it instantly from the way Marco raised his weapon and fired without hesitation. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man went down, and we stepped over him without slowing. "Almost there," Antonio panted. "Next hallway, third door on the..." An explosion rocked the house. The floor beneath us buckled. I fell, my knees hitting marble hard enough to send pain shooting up my legs. Debris rained down from the ceiling, and somewhere in the distance, an alarm began to wail. Marco hauled me to my feet. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. But his grip was steady, his expression focused. "Keep moving!" We burst through a door into what looked like a study. Antonio slammed it behind us, throwing the lock, though we all knew it wouldn't hold for long. He ran to a bookshelf, pressing something that made it swing open like a door, revealing a steel chamber beyond. The panic room. "Get in," Marco ordered, practically throwing me inside. The space was small, maybe 10 by 10, lined with monitors showing various angles of the property. On the screens, I could see the full scope of the assault. At least 20 men swarming the grounds, some in suits I recognized as Stefano's, others in tactical gear that marked them as professional soldiers. And there, in the center of it all, was Dante. Fighting like a man possessed, his movements precise and lethal. Bodies fell around him, but more kept coming. "We need to help him," I said, pressing my hands against the monitors as if I could reach through them. "We need to keep you safe," Antonio corrected. "That's what he'd want." "I don't care what he wants." Marco's hand closed around my shoulder, gentle but firm. "Miss Aria, if you go out there, if they get their hands on you, everything Dante is fighting for becomes meaningless. Every man who dies today dies for nothing. You understand?" I understood. I hated it, but I understood. The steel door began to close, sealing us in. Through the narrowing gap, I could see Antonio taking up a position in the study, checking his weapon, preparing to be the last line of defense. "Antonio," I called out, "don't die for me, please." He looked back, and for the first time since I'd met him, he smiled. "We all die for something, Miss Aria. Better it be for someone worth it." The door sealed with a hiss of hydraulics, cutting off the sounds of battle. The monitors showed everything in terrible silence, the violence reduced to flickering images on screens. Marco moved to a control panel, typing rapidly. "Backup's 15 minutes out. We just need to hold until then. 15 minutes. An eternity when death danced outside our metal cage. On the screens I watched Dante fight his way toward the house, toward us. Blood stained his white shirt, but he moved without hesitation, without mercy. This was the man everyone feared. The monster hiding behind beautiful eyes and gentle touches. This was the man who'd burn the city down for me. And as I stood in that panic room, watching him fight for my life, I finally understood the truth I'd been running from since that first espresso. I was already his, whether I wanted to be or not. My heart had made its choice the moment he'd looked at me with kind eyes in a cruel world. Now all I could do was pray we both lived long enough for it to matter. The minutes crawled by like hours. On the screens, I watched the battle rage through Dante's estate with a detached horror that felt surreal, as if I were watching a movie rather than real people bleeding and dying on my behalf. Marco stood rigid by the control panel, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath his skin. His gun remained trained on the sealed door, ready for the moment someone breached our sanctuary. Blood still dripped from the cut above his eye, but he didn't seem to notice. "There," I breathed, pointing at one of the monitors. Dante had made it inside the house, 3 of his men flanking him. They moved through the corridors with lethal efficiency, clearing rooms, neutralizing threats. But the numbers were against them. For every attacker they dropped, 2 more seemed to appear. "He's heading toward the study," Marco observed, his voice carefully neutral, "trying to reach us. That's good, right?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. On another screen, I could see Stefano near the front entrance, directing his men like a general commanding troops. He wasn't fighting. Men like him never did their own dirty work. But his presence orchestrated the chaos, turned it from random violence into calculated assault. A new group of vehicles tore through the gates. For a moment, hope flared in my chest, backup arriving early, but Marco's curse extinguished it instantly. "More Calabrese," he spat. "They're committing everything to this. Why?" The question burst out of me, desperate and confused. Why am I worth all this? I'm nobody, just a girl who served coffee. Why would they risk war for me? Marco's eyes met mine, and I saw pity there mixed with grim understanding. Because you're not nobody to him, and in our world, that makes you the most valuable target imaginable. Kill you. And they break Dante Moretti, break the boss, and his empire crumbles. The words settled over me like a shroud. My existence had become a weapon pointed at the man who'd tried to protect me. On the screen showing the study, Antonio had taken cover behind Dante's massive desk, trading fire with 2 men who'd breached the room. I watched, paralyzed, as he took a hit to the shoulder. He stumbled but kept fighting, kept protecting the door that separated them from us. "He's hurt," I whispered. "He's doing his job. His job is dying for me. His job is loyalty." Marco's tone brooked no argument. "Same as mine. Same as every man out there bleeding for the boss. We chose this life, Miss Aria. We knew the price. but I hadn't chosen it. That was the terrible truth crushing my chest. I just wanted to serve an espresso and earn enough tips to pay my rent. I'd never asked for any of this, the luxury, the danger, the impossible man who looked at me like I was salvation and damnation wrapped in one fragile package. Movement on the central monitor caught my attention. Dante had reached the study, kicking the door open and dropping one of Antonio's attackers with a single shot. The second man turned, but Antonio took him down despite his wounded shoulder. The two of them exchanged words I couldn't hear. Then Dante was at the bookshelf, his hands moving over the hidden mechanism. "He's coming," Marco said unnecessarily. The steel door began to open with agonizing slowness. Every second felt like tempting fate, giving the enemy time to close in, to stop us from reuniting. But then the gap was wide enough, and Dante was there, alive and furious and beautiful in his violence. Our eyes met across the threshold, and something in my chest cracked open. He was covered in blood, some his, most not. His shirt torn, a cut across his cheekbone that would scar, but his eyes burned with an intensity that made my knees weak. "Are you hurt?" His hands were on me before I could answer, running over my arms, my face, checking for injuries with a desperation that belied his controlled exterior. "I'm fine. Dante, I'm fine." I grabbed his wrists, stilling his frantic search. "But you're bleeding." "It's nothing." He pulled me against his chest, one arm banding around my waist like iron. With the other, he raised his gun, covering the entrance. "Antonio, status?" "Shoulder wound, but functional." Antonio pressed his hand against the bleeding, his face pale but determined. "They're regrouping. I'd say we have maybe 2 minutes before they locate the panic room. Backup ETA?" Marco checked his phone. 8 minutes, maybe less. Too long. Dante's arm tightened around me, his jaw set in hard lines. "We need to move her now, while we have the chance." "Move her where?" I demanded. "In case you haven't noticed, the house is surrounded." "There's a tunnel," he said, already pulling me toward the back of the panic room. "Built by my grandfather during Prohibition. Leads to a garage 3 blocks away. Cars are already positioned there." Of course there was a tunnel. Of course this house had secret passages and contingency plans. Because Dante Moretti prepared for every possibility, anticipated every threat, except the threat of his own uncle's betrayal. He pressed a panel in the back wall, and a section swung inward, revealing a narrow passage that descended into darkness. Cold air rushed up, carrying the smell of damp earth and old concrete. "Marco, you take point. Antonio, you're with me covering the rear." Dante positioned me between them, his body a shield at my back. "We move fast and quiet. If shooting starts, you keep moving no matter what. Understand?" The last part was directed at me. I nodded, not trusting my voice. We descended into the tunnel, and the darkness swallowed us whole. Emergency lights flickered to life, casting everything in sickly yellow. The walls were brick, sweating moisture, the floor uneven concrete that had cracked and shifted over decades. Above us, I could hear muffled sounds, footsteps, shouts, more gunfire. They'd found the panic room. "Faster," Dante urged, his hand finding the small of my back, propelling me forward. We ran through that underground tomb, our footsteps echoing off the walls, our breathing harsh in the confined space. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but fear kept me moving, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. The tunnel seemed endless, stretching on and on into shadow. Water dripped somewhere, a steady rhythm that counted seconds, minutes, the time we didn't have. Behind us, the sounds of pursuit grew louder. They'd found the entrance. "Almost there," Marco called back. "I can see the exit." Hope surged through me, sharp and painful. We were going to make it. We were. The explosion was deafening in the enclosed space. The tunnel shook, debris raining down from the ceiling. I stumbled. Would have fallen if Dante's arm hadn't caught me around the waist, hauling me upright and forward. "They're collapsing the tunnel," Antonio shouted. "Go, go, go!" We ran faster, racing against the cave-in chasing at our heels. The ceiling groaned, bricks falling in showers of dust and ancient mortar. Marco reached the exit first, a metal ladder leading up to a trap door. He climbed with impressive speed for a man his size, shoving the door open and flooding the tunnel with gray daylight. "You next," Dante ordered, practically lifting me onto the ladder. I climbed, my hand slipping on the wet rungs, my heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. Marco grabbed my arms from above, hauling me up and out into a garage that smelled of motor oil and rubber. 2 black SUVs sat waiting, engines already running. Dante emerged next, then Antonio, and finally Marco slammed the trapdoor shut, dragging a workbench over it for good measure. Not that it would stop anyone for long. "Keys are in the ignition," someone said, a driver already positioned in the first vehicle. "Safe house is programmed into the GPS." Dante pulled open the rear door of the second SUV, pushing me inside before sliding in beside me. Antonio took the passenger seat despite his injury, his gun never lowering. Marco jumped into the driver's seat, and then we were moving, tires squealing as we burst out of the garage into an alley. The city streets had never looked so beautiful. Normal people going about normal lives, completely unaware of the violence we'd just escaped. I watched them through tinted windows, these ghosts of my former existence, and wondered if I'd ever be that innocent again. Dante's phone rang, a harsh sound in the tense silence. He answered in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and furious. I didn't need to understand the language to grasp the content. Status reports, casualty counts, the price paid for my survival. When he ended the call, his hand found mine, threading our fingers together with a gentleness that contradicted the violence still humming through his body. "How bad?" I asked quietly. 5 dead, 7 injured, 3 critical. Each word sounded like it cost him. Good men. Loyal men. "I'm sorry." The words were pathetically inadequate. "Don't." His grip tightened. "Don't apologize for being alive. But they died because... they died doing their job, protecting what's mine." He turned to face me, and the possessiveness in his expression stole my breath. "You are mine, Arya, whether you've accepted it yet or not. Mine to protect, mine to keep safe, mine to..." He cut himself off, jaw clenching. "Yours to what?" "Mine to love," he finished, so quietly I almost missed it. "Even though I have no right to. Even though it puts you in danger. Even though every logical part of me knows I should let you go." My heart stumbled. "Dante, the safe house is secure," he continued as if I hadn't spoken, as if he hadn't just casually admitted to loving me in the back of a speeding SUV while running for our lives. "Remote, defended, off the grid. You'll stay there until this is finished, until every threat is eliminated and every traitor is dealt with. And then what? Then you decide." His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture almost absent. "Stay or go. Me or freedom. Whatever you choose, I'll give you the resources to disappear if that's what you want. New identity, new life, far away from all of this. You'd let me go?" I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. His laugh was bitter. "No, but I'd do it anyway. Because keeping you against your will, watching you wither in a cage, even a gilded one, that would destroy me faster than any bullet." The SUV turned sharply, merging onto a highway heading away from the city. Buildings gave way to suburbs, then to open land dotted with trees still bare from winter. The sky had darkened with the promise of more rain. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I'd forgotten I even had it. The screen showed 17 missed calls from Sarah, 32 texts asking where I was, if I was okay, why I hadn't shown up for my shift this morning. My shift. My normal, boring, safe shift at a diner where the biggest danger was burning myself on the coffee pot. That life felt like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. "You should answer," Dante said, reading over my shoulder. "Tell her you're sick, that you'll be out for a while. How long is a while? However long it takes to end this war." War. The word hung between us, heavy with implication. This wasn't just a conflict anymore. This was total war, the kind that reshaped territories and rewrote power structures. All because of me. I typed out a message to Sarah, keeping it vague. "Caught a nasty flu, need to rest. Will call when I'm better." The lies came easier now. Another piece of my innocence chipped away. "We're here," Marco announced, turning onto an unmarked road that wound through dense forest. The safe house appeared through the trees like something from a fairy tale, if fairy tales featured fortified compounds with security cameras and armed guards. It was beautiful in a stark way, all stone and glass tucked into the hillside, designed to blend with the landscape while remaining defensible. Men emerged as we pulled up, their weapons visible but lowered. Dante's people, his army, ready to die for their boss and his, what was I to him? Girlfriend seemed too casual, prisoner too harsh, obsession perhaps, or burden. Or maybe just mine, as he'd said. His, with all the complicated weight that word carried. We filed inside, and I was struck by the contrast to his estate. Where that had been opulent and grand, this was spare and functional, comfortable but not extravagant. A place built for survival rather than display. Upstairs, second door on the left, Dante directed, his hand at the small of my back again, always touching, always anchoring me to him. Rest. Shower. Maria had clothes sent ahead for you. Of course she had. Even in crisis, even running for our lives, the machine of Dante's world kept turning. The bedroom was simple. A large bed, a dresser, windows overlooking the forest, a bathroom connected to it, already stocked with everything I might need. Evidence of preparation, of Dante thinking ahead to the possibility of this exact scenario. How long had he been planning for this? How many contingencies had he built into his life to accommodate my presence? "I'll be downstairs," he said from the doorway, already pulling out his phone to make more calls, issue more orders, coordinate the response to today's assault. "Marco's outside your door. Don't open it for anyone else. Dante." I caught his arm before he could leave. "Thank you. For getting me out. For keeping me alive." His expression softened marginally. "I told you, Piccola. I'll burn the city down before I let anything happen to you." He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles that felt like a promise and a threat wrapped together. "Rest. When you wake up, we'll talk about what comes next." Then he was gone, leaving me alone in this new cage, this new chapter of a life I hadn't asked for, but couldn't seem to escape. I moved to the window, watching the gray afternoon fade toward evening. Somewhere out there, Dante was planning his revenge. Somewhere, his uncle was celebrating what he thought was victory. Somewhere, the Calabrese family was learning they'd failed to kill me, which meant they'd try again. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the fear and confusion and anger, a terrible truth was taking root. I didn't want to leave. Didn't want the new identity or the fresh start far away from all this. I wanted the impossible man who'd brought me tea and called me his. The dangerous man who looked at me like I was worth burning cities for. I wanted Dante Moretti. Consequences be damned. I didn't sleep. How could I, knowing that men had died today because of me? Instead, I stood at the window watching darkness claim the forest, transforming the trees into shadowy sentinels standing guard over this latest prison. The shower had washed away the dust and fear from the tunnel, but nothing could cleanse the images burned into my mind. Antonio's blood. The bodies in the hallway. Dante's face as he'd pulled me against him. That mixture of relief and rage and something deeper. Something that terrified me more than any gun. Maria had indeed sent clothes. The entire wardrobe, actually, hanging in the closet as if I'd be here for months rather than days. The thought made my chest tighten. How long could this last? How long before someone else died for the crime of standing between me and Dante's enemies? A soft knock interrupted my spiraling thoughts. "Aria?" Dante's voice came through the door, quieter than I'd ever heard it. "May I come in?" I pulled the robe tighter around myself. Silk, of course, because even in a safe house, Dante Moretti didn't do anything by half measures. "It's your house." The door opened and he slipped inside, closing it softly behind him. He'd showered too, changed into fresh clothes, dark jeans and a black Henley that made him look younger, less like the feared Mafia boss, and more like the man who'd brought me tea just last night. Had it really been only last night? It felt like a lifetime ago. The cut on his cheekbone had been cleaned and bandaged. Other injuries peeked out from beneath his sleeves, bruises forming, scratches from debris. Evidence of how close we'd both come to dying today. "You should be resting," he said, moving to stand beside me at the window. So should you. I can't. Not until I know you're safe. His reflection in the glass looked haunted, exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. I've been on calls for the last 3 hours, coordinating responses, issuing orders, dealing with the fallout. How bad is it? He was quiet for a long moment. The estate is a war zone. Parts of it are still burning. The study where we were, the panic room, both breached after we left. If we'd stayed even 2 minutes longer. He trailed off, the implication hanging heavy between us. And your uncle? Gone. Vanished like smoke the moment the shooting started. He orchestrated the entire thing, used the Calabrese family as pawns while positioning himself to sweep in and take control after I was weakened or dead, his hands curled into fists on the windowsill. My own blood. My father's brother. And I never saw it coming. The pain in his voice cracked something open inside me. I'd been so focused on my own fear, my own anger at being dragged into this world, that I'd forgotten. Dante had been betrayed too, by family, which in his world was supposed to be sacred. I'm sorry, I said softly. Don't be. This is the life I chose, the empire I built. Every action has consequences. And today I'm paying for mine. He turned to face me, and the vulnerability in his expression nearly undid me. But you shouldn't have to pay for them too. That's what kills me, Arya. You're suffering for my sins. I made my own choices. The words surprised me even as I said them. I could have run after that first day. Could have quit the cafe, moved cities, disappeared, but I didn't. I stayed. I kept coming back, kept letting you into my life, I stopped, unable to finish. Kept what? Kept falling, I whispered. The admission ripped from somewhere deep inside. Despite knowing better, despite every logical reason to run, I kept falling for you anyway. The air between us shifted, charged with an electricity that made my skin tingle. Dante's eyes darkened, his breath catching in a way that sent heat pooling low in my stomach. You shouldn't say things like that, he said, his voice rough. Not when I'm barely holding on to control. Not when I want nothing more than to... He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Then to what? Then to claim you completely, to make you mine in every way that matters, to ensure that no one, not my uncle or the Calabrese family or anyone else, ever questions who you belong to. His hand came up, fingers tangling in my still damp hair. But that wouldn't be fair to you. You deserve choice, freedom. You deserve better than a man with blood on his hands and darkness in his soul. Maybe I don't want better. I leaned into his touch, my own boldness surprising me. Maybe I want exactly this. The dangerous man who looks at me like I'm precious. The impossible man who'd burn cities to keep me safe. Arya. I'm terrified, I continued, the words tumbling out now that I'd started. Absolutely terrified of you, of this world, of what it means to be yours. But I'm more terrified of walking away and spending the rest of my life wondering what if. What if I'd been brave enough to choose the danger? What if I'd let myself love the monster? I'm not a monster. But his eyes said otherwise, said he'd done monstrous things and would do more without hesitation if it meant keeping me alive. No, I agreed. You're something far more dangerous. You're a man who makes me want to stay when every survival instinct screams to run. His control snapped. I saw it happen, saw the moment the careful distance he'd maintained shattered like glass. His mouth crashed against mine with a desperation that spoke of too many almost losses, too many close calls, too much fear channeled into hunger. I responded with equal fervor, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer, needing to feel the solid reality of him alive and here and mine. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined during those late nights when I'd lain awake thinking about him. It wasn't gentle or sweet or tentative. It was consuming, possessive. A claiming and a surrender all at once. His hand slid down my sides, pulling me flush against him, the silk robe the only barrier between us. I could feel the heat of his skin through the thin fabric, the rapid beating of his heart matching my own frantic rhythm. Tell me to stop, he breathed against my lips, even as his mouth moved to my jaw, my neck, finding sensitive spots that made me gasp. Tell me you don't want this and I'll walk away. I'll give you space, time, whatever you need. Don't stop. The words came out desperate, needy. Don't you dare stop, he groaned, the sound vibrating through my entire body. His hands found the belt of my robe, and he paused, giving me one last chance to refuse. Instead, I reached up and pulled his mouth back to mine, answering with action rather than words. The robe fell open. His hands, calloused and warm, traced the curves he'd only looked at before, mapping my body with a reverence that made tears spring to my eyes. This wasn't just desire, this was worship, devotion, the physical manifestation of every unspoken emotion that had built between us over 3 months. We moved to the bed, a tangle of limbs and desperation and need that transcended the physical. When he finally made me his, completely, irrevocably, it felt like crossing a threshold from which there was no return, like sealing a pact written in pleasure and pain, and promises neither of us dared speak aloud. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his fingers tracing idle patterns on my bare shoulder. The room had grown dark, only the faint glow from the security lights outside providing illumination. I love you. The words escaped him quietly, almost hesitantly. I've loved you since that first day in the cafe when you smiled at me like I was just a man instead of a monster. I should have let you go then, should have walked away before I dragged you into this nightmare. But I'm too selfish, too possessive. The thought of anyone else touching you, looking at you, having what's mine. His arm tightened around me. I'd rather die than let you go. You won't have to. I lifted my head to meet his eyes. I'm not going anywhere. Even knowing what I am, what I've done, I don't need to know the details to understand the reality. You're dangerous, violent, part of a world that operates by rules I don't understand. But you're also the man who brings me tea when I'm cold, who worries when I'm late, who fights like hell to keep me safe. I choose you, Dante. All of you. Darkness included. He pulled me closer, his lips finding my forehead in a kiss that felt like a benediction. Then I'll spend every day of my life ensuring you never regret that choice. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other, and the fragile peace we'd carved from chaos. Outside, guards patrolled. Security cameras watched. Somewhere, enemies plotted our destruction. But in that moment, none of it mattered. The phone on the nightstand shattered our sanctuary with its harsh ring. Dante tensed, reaching for it with obvious reluctance. Yes? His voice shifted instantly, becoming the cold, controlled tone of a boss receiving a report. When? How many? A pause, his expression darkening. I see. And Stefano? Another pause, longer this time. Understood. Increase security here. Double the guards. I want eyes on every approach. He ended the call and sat up, the warmth draining from his features. What is it? I asked, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. The Calabrese family made another move. Hit 3 of my businesses simultaneously. A restaurant, a club, and a warehouse. They're escalating, trying to provoke me into a full-scale war. His jaw set in hard lines. And it's working. What does that mean? He turned to look at me, and I saw the transformation complete. The gentle lover replaced by the ruthless boss. It means I can't hide anymore, can't play defense while they pick apart everything I've built. Tomorrow, I take the fight to them. Fear crystallized in my chest. You mean you're leaving? I have to. This ends with either them destroyed or me dead. There's no middle ground, no negotiated peace. Not after today. Not after they came for you. He cupped my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. You'll be safe here. Marco and 20 men will guard this place. I've called in reinforcements from our allies. Nothing will get through. Unless something happens to you. I grabbed his wrist, holding tight. What happens to me if you die out there, Dante? Did you think about that? Every second of every day. His expression softened marginally. If something happens to me, Marco has instructions. Money, documents, everything you need to disappear and start over. You'll be taken care of. I don't want to be taken care of. I want you alive. Then pray I'm as good as everyone says I am. He kissed me again, this time with a finality that terrified me. Get some sleep. I leave at dawn. I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. You can't stop me. Watch me. He stood, pulling on his clothes with efficient movements. You stay here where it's safe. That's not negotiable. Nothing about this is negotiable. I shot to my feet, wrapping the sheet around myself. You don't get to make love to me, tell me you love me, and then run off to get yourself killed. That's not how this works. In my world, that's exactly how it works. But I could see the conflict in his eyes. The war between keeping me close and keeping me safe. I can't do what needs to be done if I'm worried about you. I can't be ruthless and calculating if every decision is filtered through the fear of losing you. I need to know you're here, protected, waiting for me to come back. And if you don't come back, then at least I'll die, knowing you're alive. He crossed back to me, pulling me against him one more time. Promise me you'll stay here. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. I wanted to refuse, wanted to fight and argue, and demand to stand by his side. But the desperation in his eyes stopped me. He needed this. Needed the certainty that I was safe so he could do the terrible things necessary to ensure our survival. I promise, I whispered against his chest, but you promise me something too. Promise me you'll come back, that this isn't goodbye. I promise. His lips found mine in a kiss that tasted of desperation and determination. I'll always come back to you, Piccola, always. Then he was gone, slipping out into the hallway and closing the door behind him. I heard his footsteps receding, heard him issuing orders in that commanding tone that brooked no argument. I stood at the window again, watching as vehicles arrived throughout the night, bringing more men, more weapons, more preparation for war. Dante appeared periodically, a dark figure moving between buildings, coordinating his forces for the assault to come. This was real. This was happening. The man I loved was going to war, and there was nothing I could do but wait and pray he survived. As dawn approached, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire, I watched him prepare to leave. He stood by the lead vehicle, surrounded by his men, every inch the feared boss. But just before he climbed inside, he looked up at my window. Our eyes met across the distance, and I pressed my hand against the glass. He mirrored the gesture, his palm raised as if he could touch mine through space and barriers. Then he was gone, the convoy disappearing into the trees, taking my heart with them into battle. The hours after Dante left felt like days. I paced the bedroom until my legs ached, then collapsed on the bed only to find sleep impossible. Every sound made me jump. Was it gunfire? An explosion? News of his death? But each time, it was just the wind, or the guards changing shifts, or my own imagination torturing me with possibilities. Marco brought me breakfast that I couldn't eat. Lunch that went untouched. He didn't comment, just removed the plates with sympathetic eyes that made everything worse. Because pity meant there was something to pity, and I couldn't afford to think about what Dante might be facing. The sun was setting again, a full day since he'd left, when Marco appeared at my door with an expression I couldn't read. "Miss Aria," he said carefully, "there's news." My heart stopped. Is he alive? But there's been a development. He's requested your presence at a location downtown. I have orders to escort you there immediately. Relief and fear warred inside me. What kind of development? He didn't say. Just that you need to be there. Marco's jaw tightened, and that it can't wait. 20 minutes later, I was in the back of an armored SUV, speeding toward the city with Marco at the wheel and 4 other vehicles flanking us. The security was even tighter than usual. Every man on high alert, weapons visible. We drove past the burned remains of Dante's estate, blackened walls, shattered windows, police tape fluttering in the evening breeze, evidence of yesterday's violence, a tombstone for the life we'd briefly shared there. The convoy turned into an industrial district I didn't recognize, all abandoned warehouses and empty lots. We stopped outside a building that looked like it should have been condemned decades ago, but the number of luxury cars parked around it told a different story. "Stay close," Marco instructed, opening my door. "Don't speak unless spoken to, and whatever you see inside, remember that this is how our world works." His warning made my stomach clench, but I nodded. He led me inside, through hallways that smelled of rust and old concrete, past men who watched with calculating eyes. The sound of voices grew louder as we approached a large room at the building's center. The space opened up before me, a former factory floor probably, now cleared except for chairs arranged in a semicircle. And in those chairs sat men I recognized from photographs in Dante's study, the heads of other families, the power brokers of the city's underworld. And there, standing in the center like a king holding court, was Dante. He wore a tailored black suit, not a hair out of place, looking every inch the powerful boss, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the careful way he held himself that suggested injuries beneath the expensive fabric. His eyes found mine across the room, and something in his expression made my breath catch. Aria. He extended a hand, beckoning me forward. I walked toward him on trembling legs, aware of every eye tracking my movement. Marco stayed close, a silent shadow at my back. When I reached Dante, his hand closed around mine, warm and solid and reassuring. "Gentlemen," he addressed the room, his voice carrying absolute authority. "You've all questioned my recent decisions, questioned my strength, my focus, my ability to lead while harboring what you've called a weakness." His grip on my hand tightened. "Today, I've proven those concerns unfounded. The Calabrese family no longer exists. Their operations have been absorbed, their leadership eliminated, their threat neutralized." Murmurs rippled through the assembled bosses. Dante continued, his tone allowing no interruption. "But more importantly, I've dealt with the traitor in my own house. My uncle Stefano, who conspired with my enemies, who orchestrated yesterday's attack, who believed he could take what I've built." He gestured to a door on the far side of the room. It opened, and two men dragged someone forward. Even beaten and bloodied, I recognized Stefano Moretti. They forced him to his knees in the center of the room, his expensive suit torn and stained, his face a canvas of purple bruises and split skin. "He awaits your judgment," one of the older bosses said, his voice gravelly with age and cigarettes. As is tradition, Dante released my hand, walking slowly around his uncle like a predator circling prey. "You raised me," he said quietly, though his voice carried to every corner of the room. "After my father died, you taught me this business. You showed me how to command respect, how to build an empire, how to be ruthless when necessary. And this is how you repay that bond? By conspiring with our enemies? By putting innocent blood at risk?" Stefano spat blood onto the concrete. "That girl made you weak. You stopped thinking like a boss and started thinking like a lovesick fool. I did what was necessary to preserve our family's legacy." "Our family's legacy?" Dante's laugh was cold, humorless. "You tried to have me killed. You allied with the Calabrese, knowing they'd eliminate anyone connected to me, including your own nephew. That's not preserving legacy, that's destroying it for personal gain." He turned to face the assembled bosses. "The old ways say blood demands blood. That family betrayal can only be answered with family justice. Do any of you dispute my right to execute this sentence?" Silence answered him. Even the oldest bosses, the ones who'd known Stefano for decades, said nothing. In this world, betrayal had only one punishment. Dante drew a gun from inside his jacket, the same weapon I'd seen him carry through yesterday's violence. He checked it with practiced efficiency, then looked at his uncle one final time. "You taught me to be ruthless," he said softly. "Consider this lesson learned." The gunshot was deafening in the enclosed space. I flinched, turning my face into Marco's shoulder, unable to watch. But I heard the body hit the ground, heard the finality of it echo off the walls. When I looked again, Stefano lay still, blood pooling beneath him. Dante stood over the body, his expression carved from ice, showing nothing of what he might feel about killing his own family. "Let this serve as a reminder," he addressed the room. "I am not weak. My devotion to this woman does not diminish my capability, it enhances it. Because now I have something worth fighting for, worth killing for, worth burning this entire city for if necessary." His eyes found mine. "Anyone who threatens her threatens me, and anyone who threatens me dies. Are we clear?" "Clear," the bosses chorused, some grudging, some approving, all accepting. "Then we're done here." Dispose of the body. This meeting is concluded. The room emptied quickly, bosses and their men filing out into the night, leaving only Dante, Marco, myself, and the corpse of a man who'd bet wrong and paid the ultimate price. Dante holstered his weapon, then turned to me. I saw the moment his icy facade cracked, revealing the exhaustion and pain beneath. He swayed slightly, and I rushed forward, catching his arm. "You're hurt," I said, feeling wetness seep through his jacket. "You're bleeding." "Flesh wound. I've had worse." But his voice lacked its usual strength. "Hospital. Now," I looked at Marco. "Get him to a hospital." "No hospitals," Dante protested. "Too many questions. We have a doctor on call. I don't care if you have the Pope on call. You need proper medical attention." I turned to Marco again, putting every ounce of command I could muster into my voice. "Take us somewhere safe where he can be treated." "That's not a request." Marco's lips twitched in what might have been a smile. "Yes, ma'am." "I know a place." The place turned out to be a private clinic in a wealthy suburb, the kind that catered to people who needed discretion as much as treatment. A doctor who looked like he'd patched up his share of gunshot wounds took one look at Dante and immediately began issuing orders. I sat in the waiting room while they worked, my hands shaking with delayed reaction to everything I'd witnessed. Marco brought coffee that I couldn't taste, his presence a silent reassurance. "He did it for you," Marco said quietly. "Everything today. Eliminating the Calabrese, executing his uncle, making that statement to the other families. He did it so they'd know you're untouchable, so no one would ever dare target you again. He killed his own uncle." The words felt surreal in my mouth. "His uncle tried to kill him first. And you." Marco's expression was grave. "In our world, that's not murder. That's justice. And it needed witnesses, needed to be public, so everyone understands the consequences of threatening what the boss protects." "This is insane." "Yes," he agreed simply. "But it's our world. His world. And now, yours too." The doctor emerged an hour later, wiping his hands on a towel. "He'll be fine. Took a bullet to his side yesterday that he apparently decided to ignore while conducting a war. The wound was infected, starting to septic. Another day, and we might have lost him." He fixed me with a stern look. "Keep him in bed for at least 3 days. No arguments, no excuses. His body needs time to heal. I'll make sure of it," I promised. They'd moved Dante to a recovery room, a space designed to look like a luxury hotel rather than a medical facility. He lay in the bed, shirtless and bandaged, IV fluids dripping into his arm. His eyes were closed, his face pale, and for the first time since I'd met him, he looked vulnerable. I pulled a chair close to the bed, taking his hand in mine. His eyes opened at the contact, focusing on me with effort. "You should have told me you were hurt," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Couldn't show weakness, not with everything that needed to be done. His thumb traced circles on my palm, the gesture automatic. "But it's over now. The Calabrese are gone. Stefano's dead. The other families have accepted you as mine. You're safe." "What about you? Are you safe?" "As safe as someone in my position can be." He managed a weak smile, which admittedly isn't very safe at all. "But I'm not going anywhere, Piccola. I made you a promise." Tears I'd been holding back finally broke free, streaming down my face. "You could have died. You almost did die, and you didn't even tell me you were hurt. If I'd told you, you would have tried to stop me, and I needed to finish this. Needed to make you safe before..." He stopped, wincing as he tried to shift position. "Before what?" "Before I asked you to stay. Really stay. Not as my prisoner or my responsibility, but as my partner, my equal." He pulled me closer, his other hand coming up to wipe away my tears. "I want you in my life, Arya, not hidden away in safe houses, not protected from the reality of what I am, but beside me, fully aware, fully choosing, fully mine. That's terrifying. I know. And I'm not saying it will be easy. There will be more danger, more violence, more nights when you'll wonder if I'll come home. But I swear to you, I will spend every day earning the gift of your presence. I will protect you with everything I have, and I will love you with a devotion that borders on obsession." His eyes burned into mine. "Stay with me. Choose this life. Choose me, and I'll give you the world." I should have needed time to think, should have asked for space to process everything that had happened, but the truth was, I'd already made my choice. I'd made it when I'd felt relief instead of freedom at his return. I'd made it when I'd stood in that warehouse and felt pride instead of horror at his display of power. I'd made it the moment I'd fallen in love with a man who'd burned cities for me. "I choose you," I whispered. "All of you. Darkness and light. I choose this insane, dangerous, impossible life. I choose us." His smile transformed his face, washing away the exhaustion and pain, leaving only joy. "Then I'm the luckiest man alive." He pulled me down for a kiss that tasted of promises and forever, of violence redeemed by devotion, of danger transformed into destiny. When we finally broke apart, I settled into the chair beside his bed, my hand still clasped in his. Outside, guards kept watch. Somewhere in the city, Dante's empire continued its machinations. Threats would emerge, battles would be fought, darkness would always lurk at the edges. But here, in this moment, we had peace. We had each other, and that was enough. "Tell me about the future," I said softly. "Our future." "We'll rebuild the estate," he began, his voice growing drowsy from medication. "Make it a home instead of just a fortress. You'll finish your degree. I'll ensure your safety on campus. We'll find balance between my world and yours. And someday, when the empire is secure and the threats are minimal, maybe we'll add to our family. Children?" The thought sent warmth through my chest. "If you want them. Little ones with your kindness and my stubbornness." He smiled, eyes drifting closed. "A legacy built on love instead of blood. I'd like that. Then it's yours. Everything I have, everything I am. It's all yours, Piccola Mia." His breathing deepened, sleep finally claiming him. I watched him rest, this dangerous, devoted, impossible man who'd turned my world upside down. 3 months ago, I'd been invisible, drowning in debt and loneliness. Now I was loved by a king of shadows, protected by an army, part of an empire. It was insane, terrifying, completely illogical, and I wouldn't change a single moment of it, because some love stories aren't written in sunlight and safety. Some are forged in fire and blood, and the terrible, beautiful choice to stand beside someone despite the cost. Some require bravery that looks like madness to anyone watching from the outside, but from the inside, wrapped in Dante's love and protection, it felt like coming home. Marco appeared in the doorway, his expression soft with understanding. "The safe house is secured, Miss Arya. Whenever you're ready, we can take you both back." "Soon," I said, not willing to release Dante's hand just yet. "Let him rest a bit longer. Take all the time you need. The boss gave orders. Your word is law now. Whatever you say goes." The weight of that settled over me, not a burden, but a mantle. I wasn't just Dante's woman anymore. I was his partner, his equal in the eyes of his world. The girl who'd served espresso had become a queen of shadows. As darkness fell outside the window, I leaned forward and pressed a kiss to Dante's forehead, breathing in the scent of him, cedar and danger and home. "I love you," I whispered against his skin. "My monster, my king, my impossible man." He stirred slightly, a smile curving his lips even in sleep. "Love you too, Piccola. My salvation, my light, my everything." And in that moment, surrounded by guards and danger and the weight of an empire, I knew we'd found something rare and precious, a love strong enough to survive the darkness, a bond forged in fire that would never break. This was our beginning, violent and passionate and utterly ours, and I couldn't wait to see where it would take us.